Rain hammered the street like a warning. Headlights cut through the sheets of water, and then a thin figure appeared. Barefoot, mud clinging to her legs, clothes torn and stained. She stumbled down the sidewalk as if daylight itself was a shock. The driver slammed on his brakes and ran toward her. She turned. Her eyes were wide, empty in a way that made the man's chest go cold. She whispered one word: help. Within minutes, the sirens came. Paramedics wrapped the woman in a blanket and lifted her into the ambulance. When an officer asked her name, the single name on the town's cold case posters echoed back at them: Rachel Morris. Rachel, missing for almost 2 years. This is the story of a house that swallowed secrets, and of a couple who thought they'd found a forever home until the floor gave way beneath them. 2 years earlier, Rachel and Evan Morris stood in front of their newly bought brick house and smiled for a photo. The porch railings were white, the windows wide. It had been an auction buy, the kind of rare find young couples dream about, a fresh start, a place to make memories. Rachel was a planner. Evan was practical. They filmed little renovation videos for family, laughing about paint swatches and power tools. For them, the house promised permanence. But some doors hide more than dust. From the first week, the basement felt wrong. The door down there had 3 new, heavy locks. Thick insulation panels lined the walls, thicker than normal. The air was always a touch colder, a faint metallic tang lingering near the water heater. Small things began to vanish: canned goods, a flashlight, a wrench. Rachel chalked a few oddities up to moving stress until she found muddy footprints by the back door that didn't match Evan's boots. A neighbor's warning came next: an old man in a coat who stood across the street and watched the house for a long time. Then a shaky note slipped under the Morrises' front door. You shouldn't have bought this house. Some things should stay buried. The police took the note and promised to patrol, but the patrols found nothing. One evening, Evan checked the motion camera he'd installed near the basement stairs. Movement detected. The footage was grainy, but a shadow shifted behind the insulation. Evan went downstairs with a flashlight, telling Rachel to wait. She followed, phone in hand, recording. In the dim light, a panel was pried ajar, revealing a small metal door, rusted at the edges, a door that had not been there when they moved in. Evan pushed it open and found a narrow, dirt-walled passage. "Call the police," Rachel begged. Evan smiled, trying to steady her. "It's probably an old crawl space," he said, and stepped through. A muffled scuffle, a sudden bump on the dark timber, then the door slammed. Silence pressed down so hard, Rachel could hear her own pulse. She screamed. She ran outside and called 911. Detectives searched the basement, but when they arrived in force, the insulation was once again in place. The wall looked whole, no tunnel, no door. Evan's keys and phone were on the kitchen counter. He had vanished. Neighbors whispered. Some suggested an argument and a runaway. The police kept looking but found no trace. 2 days later, Rachel herself was gone. Rumors swelled. Teenagers dared each other to break into the once happy house. Windows were shattered. The house, left empty, sagged under its own silence. The property went up for sale and then fell out of favor entirely. No one wanted the place where a man had disappeared. Then, in a storm, a driver found her on the curb. She was barefoot and mud-caked. Her voice barely a thread. She said 3 words that froze everyone. He's still down there. Detective Carla Hughes sat beside her hospital bed and listened as Rachel, fragile, exhausted, and steadying herself, began to tell what had actually happened. After the officers failed to find proof, Rachel says she tore at the insulation until she blacked out. When she came to, she was in a small concrete room with a single bare bulb and a thin mattress. A man, who called himself Richard, came and went. He told her his father had once lived in the house, that his father's memory was rooted to a woman named Anna. He spoke to Rachel as if she were Anna. He fed her, cleaned her, and kept her in the dark. Richard, she said, believed some women were meant to be kept safe, hidden away. In his mind, confinement was devotion. Rachel was never physically tortured, she told Hughes. She was kept, with food brought to the room and with orders not to scream. In the flashes of memory she finally gave to investigators, there were footsteps, whispered names, the metallic taps that she'd first heard upstairs. She remembered food left at the hole in the wall, lantern light, and the way hope dimmed day by day. With a warrant in hand, officers searched the old basement properly this time. Behind a panel, they found a trapdoor leading to a tunnel of crude timbers and packed dirt. At the end of the tunnel was a small concrete cell, a cot, a lantern, canned goods, the very things Rachel described. DNA swabs later confirmed Rachel had been held there. Officers also found traces that suggested Evan had been dragged into the tunnel and did not come back out. They found more than that, evidence pointing to a history far older than any of them had imagined. In a corner, partially concealed by earth, were remains later identified as Anna Whitmore, a tenant who had gone missing from that very house in 1984. Anna's disappearance had been an unsolved wound in the neighborhood for decades. Walter Finch, the former owner, had been a reclusive contractor. Neighbors remembered him as strange but harmless. He'd been seen spending time with a young tenant named Anna, bringing groceries and lingering outside her door. When she vanished, Walter retreated from the world. His son Richard remained in the shadows of the property, a man raised in a maze of secret spaces and warped explanations. Investigators believe Walter's obsession with Anna warped into a family delusion, a belief that hiding was a kind of protection. As Richard grew up, that delusion hardened into something more dangerous. He began living in crawl spaces and tunnels beneath the house, moving silently through the foundation. When Walter died, Richard never left. He continued the cycles he'd been taught: hide, hoard, and, when Rachel moved in, mistake her for the figure his father had mourned. The evidence painted a chilling picture. In the struggle that night, Evan appears to have confronted Richard and been killed. Rachel was taken and kept in the hidden room. Richard, whose health had been declining, is believed to have suffered a stroke in the tunnels some time before Rachel's escape. Police later found him unresponsive in a remote crawl space. He died there alone. Neighbors were stunned. A small town's undercurrent of unease became a headline. The Morris house was condemned and demolished. During cleanup, workers found a yellowed photograph: Walter Finch standing beside a young woman labeled on the back, "My Anna, 1984. It was a reminder that the house had been holding memory and danger for decades. Rachel refused to be a story for cameras. She took therapy, moved in secret, and rebuilt a life under a new name. She would later watch the shaky phone clip recovered from Evan's camera, Evan's flashlight wobbling, the metal door creaking, his voice calling her name. She turned the footage off and let silence answer her question. Her days now are stitched with small rituals: therapy appointments, slow walks, a rented apartment where the walls don't creak with secrets. Some nights she hears imagined tapping under the floor. Sometimes she wakes and checks the locks twice. The world closed in one way and opened in another. For the neighborhood, the lot became a park. For Rachel, the chapter closed only on paper. This isn't a tale of monsters under beds. It's a story about what a house can hide when no one looks closely enough, about how sorrow, obsession, and secrecy can become passed down like an inheritance. It's a warning to take warnings seriously, to listen when neighbors whisper, and to trust the small notes slipped under a door. If you'd like to know more about how investigators piece cases like this together, or how communities can better protect their neighbors, let us know in the comments. And if this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell. It helps these voices reach others. They tore the house down and planted grass. The park has a bench now, and children play where a hidden room once held a terrified woman. You might pass by and never know what happened beneath your feet. But for some people, and for Rachel, a hole in the earth is not just a memory. It's a reminder that some things should never be left buried. What would you do if you found a door like that? Tell us in the comments. Thanks for watching.
Light the lantern. Join the journey. Subscribe.